Hello. Now, it's no secret that I love a Suzuki GSX-R750. I just think they're a great sports bike, the best balance of power and handling and fun and lightness, just incredible. Now, in recent times, the GSX-R750 hasn't really had a big following in terms of tuning and kind of improvements. All of that kind of technology and know-how has gone into Supersport 600 bikes and superbikes. And the 750 has kind of always been in a little bit of a no man's land when it comes to sports bikes. Well, that's all changed recently because Supersport has evolved into running Evo rules, basically to save the class because 600s are dying. So the 600cc inline fours are being joined by GSX-R750 inline fours, as well as 765 Triumph triples, F3 800 MVs, V2 Panigales and everything in between. And there's balancing rules attached to this class that basically levels all the performance out. So these very different bikes can all race together. So that's meant that the GSX-R750 has been chosen by many race teams to enter this class. And all of a sudden, you're starting to see some very funky GSX-R750s around with different suspension, tuned engines, electronics and everything in between. Now, when I was at Suzuki Live recently, I bumped into MSG Racing and spoke to their man Daniel Diamond and their rider Joe Sheldon Shaw, and they're running a GSX-R750 in British Supersport this year. And with all the mods that they've done to it, and they've done a lot of work on the bike, a lot of development, you could argue that this is the ultimate GSX-R750. So to find out, I went to have a chat to Dan and got him to talk him through his bike with me. So this is a GSX-R750 Supersport bike.
Yeah.
Wildly different to the road bike.
Yeah.
So from a chassis point of view, what have you changed?
So chassis wise, the frame, swing and arm, they remain the same.
Yeah.
Suspension wise, we get to change the rear shock. So we've got Öhlins in ours, TTX GP.
Yeah.
We've got an Öhlins fork kit in the front, still running the standard fork travel, if you like. And I think a few teams have experimented with sort of raising the front of the bikes with risers, but you've got to also remain within the rules of BSB. And then on the front end, brakes wise, you're allowed to run a master cylinder in the next generation Supersport. So we've sort of played with Brembo, we're now on an Akasato, just trialling a few different ones. And we've actually had some special Brembo discs made by Brembo UK. So we waited 10 months for those centres. So they are the 12 bobbin superbike rotor, 6mm thick. Wow. So it's not just like a standard HPK. So 12 bobbin, 6mm thick, 320mm, so you can upgrade the discs.
So already suspension and brakes is much better than that. It's going to make a massive improvement.
Much better, yeah.
And tell me, where's the development come from this? Obviously this isn't a bike that's raced very much, so how do you know what to put in this bike?
Yeah, so in terms of the electronics and bits and pieces like that, there's a few different people involved, but we've got quite a close relationship with Team Hammer in America. So like the main guy is called Chris Ulrich, and he's the manager over there of the Suzuki X-Star M4 team. So he developed the software in order of, we're now on a fly-by-wire throttle. There's no cables.
So you can have an auto blipper.
So it's got an auto blipper, it's got, you know, you can change the ignition, you can change the engine braking, and there's so much stuff within the ECU, you almost need to go to school for a few months to learn about it, but we're just sort of learning on the job really. And
so going back to the chassis, you've spoken about the frame and the swing arm and the brakes and the suspension. Is there anything else? Obviously things like rear sets, levers.
Yeah, rear sets. So, you know, from a road bike, we've got the clip-ons on there. So clip-on handlebars giving you the adjustable, whatever the rider needs. Much wider than mine. Much wider. They also, I think they drop it about 20mm from standard. So
more over the front.
Yeah, and then steering damper, upgrade that. We've got a YSS unit on there actually at the moment. For what they are, value for money, they're pretty good. Wheels remain the same. full exhaust system. You can't change anything in the airbox because it's standard.
This is
airbox.
Supersport rules,
yeah, Supersport rules. Yeah. So standard airbox, standard stacks, and race bodywork.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the switch.
Fiberglass.
Fiberglass. Yeah. We're not on the carbon yet.
Yeah.
But see how the budget goes.
Yeah. You've
Race.
got a bit of a bum stop here. What's this all about?
Yeah, so one of our riders, it's just to keep him sort of planted on the bike, so he's not, when he's accelerating, he's not moving too far back.
It's quite a long seat, isn't it?
But equally, if he wants to, he can jump up on top of it, and so he's tucked in, get a bit more aero. But yeah, brake lines, rear sets, Valtomoto rear sets, different cooling hoses and stuff like that. And
then tyres, you're allowed to run slicks in Supersport?
Yeah, slick. So SC1 front, and you can run an SC0 rear. I don't know if it's an SCX as well, but you can't run a 1 rear, so you've got to be on a 0. So when we're testing at the likes of a track day or something, it's expensive because you've got to spend a load of money on that. But yeah, the grip they generate as opposed to a road tyre when you're pushing is a lot.
And then you've got a different clock bracket here and different clocks.
Yeah, so
that's part of the ECU system.
Yeah, so the clock bracket is standard, but then you have to modify it to. We've made a little carbon fibre plate in there to mount the dash. Like I say, the electronics are all controlled, so it's sort of designed by a company called Solo Engineering. And there's a Bike Sport Developments over here. Mick Bozeman, you probably know him.
Right.
He's the main man who makes the wiring looms. So when you build one of these, you're dealing with the Americans, Solo Engineering and Bike Sport Development.
Right.
And what's silly is you have to pay America to get your loom from Mick, who's at Banbury, who's up the road from us.
Right.
So it's like a little trio of how it works.
So this whole loom is not standard?
Completely different loom, completely different switch gear. Like I say, the throttle is, there's no cables now, so it's all fly-by-wire, all electronic. And when you actually add it up, we've got traction rings here on the front end on the discs, suspension pots as well to measure the suspension travel. We need to get a secondary data logger to actually view it. But the electronics, so it's criminal really, as I said to you earlier.
Yeah, so the electronics, what do they... So let's talk about the rider aids first.
Yes.
So what rider aids would a bike like this have?
It's not got traction control.
Okay.
So there's no traction. Like I said, there's just really, in terms of what you can change, is the engine braking, the fuel map.
Yeah.
It's got an auto blipper, which a bike of this age wouldn't have.
No, exactly. Yeah.
And to be fair, on one of these, I mean, on the older bikes, like with that, it's nice to blip them yourself going down the gear, but it's weird to have a blipper on this, but also really good.
Yeah, really, exactly. So then you have to run a control ECU in this class to level up the rules supposedly. Because you've got 600 fours, you've got 754s, you've got 765 triples, you've got V2.
Yeah, the V2
almost.
Ducatis,
So what do they do to the electronics to level it all out?
So with what we see in the electronics, they basically restrict the throttle bodies to a certain percentage, and it's around 80%. So you only technically get 80% throttle. So although the bike's still quick, at the top end is where you really sort of feel that they're sort of holding back a little bit. But I guarantee if you rode yours, because you've still got the cat on that as well, so with a full system, and you rode this, I think you'd love this, and you'd still think it was quick. Yeah. In my head, I think, how quick could it be if it was?
Exactly. So that brings us on to the engine. What have you done to the engine?
So with the engine, nothing. It is completely standard.
Is it?
Yeah. And again, I don't think there is a lot that you can do aside from, if we want to take it apart, blueprint it, just make sure everything's sort of weighted and stuff like that. But at the moment, for the testing we've done, this is literally, as Whittam says, you can go out and buy
from the
a
shops.
750 road bike
bike
and put it on track, but it's a far cry from that in terms of getting the electronics on it and a lot of expense
engine,
as well.
You could stick mine in there. And
we could stick yours in there, it would be exactly the same. Yeah, because you can't do anything with the motor, which is a shame.
How does it make with the electronic restriction?
So with this particular bike, with a full system on a standard ECU on our dyno, there's 140 brake at the back wheel.
Right.
We've not yet put it on with the electronics on our dyno to see what it is, but in theory it won't be too far off that. But you're not getting 100% throttle, but you're still producing the power.
Could it
so
make?
What could it make if it was
What could it make if you absolutely threw the kitchen sink out?
Oh, if we was to tune this like what we do,
Yeah.
so port and polish, skim the head, kit
So your
gasket,
business is tuning.
tuning GSX-Rs, making them
GSX-Rs.
faster. That's
Yeah.
why it makes me pain to see this,
Yeah, exactly.
having to restrict it. But
Yeah.
I think we could get sort of 155 out of one of these
Wow.
with cams and everything, you know, which is maybe something we should do, road bike, next gen Supersport and a
Yeah.
tuned one at some point.
Yeah.
But
And you'd like to make a superbike, one of these one day?
yeah, definitely. Well, we've got one. We just need to crack on and get it done. But yeah, it would be nice.
What's your favourite part of the bike?
I like the size of them.
Yeah.
And you'll know what I'm saying. You've ridden plenty of bikes. The L7s, they just feel big.
Yeah.
When you get race bodywork on them, the seats are always a little bit higher, aren't they? I sit on a 750 like this, and I just think, this is me.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like you just get your knee down straight away.
Yeah.
And on a big bike, sometimes I feel like I'm going off the end of the world before I touch the ground.
Yeah, yeah.
They're just nimble, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're the best of both worlds.
So my bike, I'm gonna keep it as a road bike.
Yeah.
I want to do the odd track day.
Mm.
So what would be I've done quite a lot of modification, well, very subtle mods, with
Yes.
brakes and gearing and stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
What
I saw
would
you got
you
a-
do to something like this to make it a nice track day bike?
So I get carried away. But I see you've got a master cylinder on there. So you've got an RCS on there,
Yeah.
and you've got braided brake lines. What pads are you running?
SBS track day pads.
Track day pads. So to me, you got the master cylinder, you got the lines. I'd be putting a 520 chain and sprocket conversion on it just to help with acceleration, a bit lighter. Brembo discs or HPK discs and upgrade. I mean, if you've got track day pads, they're probably not too bad.
No, they're okay. Yeah.
But one of the main things for this is, and it would be night and day, is you need to get rid of the cat.
yeah, yeah.
So get rid of the cat, any DCAT system really, even if it was a Lextech on a budget or something like the Arrow here is about 1,500 quid.
Yeah.
Full Arrow competition system, 60 mil. It just releases all the power, and you'll know from previous bikes. It loses a lot of weight, and they just rev up quicker and sound a lot nicer as well.
So brakes, pipe, chain.
Yeah, chain of sprockets, sort the brakes out, sort the exhaust, then you know you need it mapped. And a good modification that you can do with these, not within that class, but the 600 standard velocity stacks are all short stacks.
Right.
So on the GSX-Rs with the 1000s and everything, we find that when you have all 4 short stacks, it increases the top end power and a bit of torque as well.
Yeah.
So you can fit the 600 stacks to something like this on a track day bike, and it just helps with the mid-range and the top end, just helps them rev a bit harder. And clip-ons.
Yeah, a lot of potential, isn't it?
Very much
It's a great
so,
bike
yeah.
to start with.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Fantastic. Well, maybe one day I can have a little go of this.
Of course you can.
But in the meantime, thanks very much.
Good man. Thank you.
And, thank you for watching. So after we finished up this interview, I managed to twist Dan's arm and actually get out on the bike myself. So after about 3 laps, so the idea was I followed my friend Paul Berriman, who was riding another Suzuki, so I could get some shots, some tracking shots of me following the bike. And then I was going to do some laps on my own just to kind of feel what this bike was like. After a few laps, the bike started to kind of weave a lot, feel quite unstable. And to begin with, I thought that it just must be the setup, because sometimes you ride race bikes and unless you're riding them absolutely at full speed, they don't feel that nice and they don't feel that stable. So I was thinking, shall I just push through this instability? And every time I got on the throttle, the bike was weaving a little bit, and even weaving down the straights. And I was thinking, is the rear shock too soft for me? You know, does Joe run it a lot softer? But eventually I thought maybe there's something wrong with the rear tyre. And indeed I came in and unfortunately we got a puncture, which isn't good because those SC0 slicks don't come cheap. So I didn't really get a taste of what this bike was like. And when you've got a racing bike that's very stiff, that's set up for a rider that's very, very fast, unless you can kind of get anywhere close to his lap times, then the bike is going to feel like a block of wood and not that nice. You know, with motorcycles, with any bike, if you can get a bike to kind of squidge, you know, if you can get the suspension to move and the tyres to dig into the tarmac, that's what gives you confidence. That's why soft bikes give you lots of confidence and hard bikes don't, generally. So in those kind of few laps, I didn't really get a chance to squidge the GSX-R750, but I did kind of get a little bit of a taster of what it was like compared to my bike. I mean, for those 3 slow laps, I preferred my bike because it's a lot softer. But when you start going faster, you need the support of the suspension, you need the extra power of the brakes, you need the extra grip, you need the wideness of the bars and the spaciousness of the riding position and the rear sets and everything in between. So although I didn't really get to experience that, it did feel like a thoroughbred racer. I've ridden enough race bikes in the past to know that this kind of really neatly fits that category. So yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to find out whether this was the ultimate GSX-R750, but I can kind of imagine it is. You know, the GSX-R750 is going really well in British Supersport. They're going really, really quick. Someone like Joe is a fantastic rider, much better than I am. But maybe one day I can get to try the bike again and not have a rear puncher. But it's kind of given me an interesting insight into what I might want to change on my bike. I wouldn't want to go the full racing hog because unless you're chasing lap times, it's not really worth it. But as Dan said to me, there would be a few well-chosen things I could do to my bike to make big improvements. So that was a really interesting little journey, looking around that fantastic MSG Racing GSX-R750. I hope you enjoyed it too. So if you like this video, please like and subscribe and stay tuned for more videos like this coming very soon.